China.
Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here. Got a great show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Fiorella is on assignment. She will be back Wednesday, though. Wednesday, we have a great show for you. That show will be titled, Has True Capitalism or Communism Ever Really Been Implemented? And she's going to have on Caleb Maupin, who is a communist, and she's going to have on Clint Russell, who is a libertarian, a pure capitalist of sorts. And you'll hear both sides say, oh, true communism has never been implemented. Neither has true capitalism. So I'm going to let them hash it out on Wednesday. Wednesday, I won't be there. Fiorella will be heading that panel up, and that's going to be fun. So we have a great show on Wednesday. But today, joining the show today, a friend of mine. I've been wanting to work with this guy for quite some time. Reached out to him almost, I'd say about a year ago, but things have been so crazy we haven't had a chance to have him on. Recently, over a Jimmy Dore tweet, though, we were able to kind of go back and forth and say, hey, why don't we have a friendly discussion about it? My good friend Wayne McEachron will be joining the show today. He's also known as Osiris from Middle MAGA YouTube channel, and he is joining the Convo Couch today. Big Wayne, what's up, buddy? How you doing today?
What's good? Let's get it. It's an honor to be on the great Convo Couch. A big fan of Fiorella and yours. One of the first, when I got a mic, when in my basement around 2020, you guys and Nico House were the first streamers that I started following. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. Like I said, I've been meaning to have you on for quite some time. Guys, please go follow my friend's work. He's got a YouTube. He goes by Middle MAGA, right? What does that really mean by Middle MAGA? Because you put down stuck in the middle as your tag on Twitter. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle because I left the Democratic Party. My last stop was Tulsi Gabbard. Before that was Bernie Sanders, but I'm gone. And I said that I can respect some of the views that some of the Trump people can have. Like I said, I feel like an honorary patriot when it comes to them, but I won't support Donald Trump. So I kind of feel stuck in the middle. You're a Trump supporter. How can you be stuck in the middle? Give us a little insight to that.
Well, I'd like to be the first to welcome you over to MAGA. I think you should be a part of MAGA, Pasta. I know that sounds crazy, but I view it as populist. That's all it is. The term MAGA to me just means populist. It is not a Donald Trump worship session. I know it can come across that way. People can look at that. I have already said publicly on my channel I'm not voting for Donald Trump as of right now for this upcoming election. He's not where I need him to be, but I'm not against him. I'm middle because I'm for Medicare for all. I'm for universal basic income. I'm for these things. I'm pro-transhumanism. The problem with these things aren't the mechanisms. The problem is that you and I would agree is the institutions and the uniparty control over them. The internet is a good thing. The bad thing is the government trying to regulate it and squelch our free speech. So that's why I kind of became in the middle. I was an AOC supporter. I loved AOC when she came up. I thought she was a true populist. I loved the Bernie Sanders movement. So many people came out of especially the 2016 Bernie Sanders movement. That was special. So that's why, I started out stuck in the middle, and I kind of aligned. I just got forcefully put into the populist right. So I embraced it. And so I just tried to brand it as Middle MAGA.
That's interesting, and I like that. And it is kind of interesting, some of the positions you're on. I was once there with AOC. I followed her campaign, showed up at her campaign headquarters to see her quite impressive campaign. It's a shame that she's at where she's at. It is kind of funny seeing this squad now all of a sudden kind of asking for the free, for Julian Assange to be all the charges dropped and him set free, and that's kind of interesting to see. They're a little bit late, but better late than never, I guess. Right now, I'll take anything for Julian Assange right now, because I do believe in a free press and I do believe in freedom of speech, and I think that's where a lot of us that when it comes to a lot of the parallels when it came to that populist right, and a lot of the people I met were those particular issues. And even so, I found it interesting that Donald Trump didn't pardon Julian Assange. Donald Trump still has this position of Operation Warp Speed, where he really hasn't even, apologized
China
for his positions on the vaccine. But one area where I think that you kind of go along with the middle populist right is when it comes to China,
China.
But, we saw this tweet that you had up the other day. Well, Jimmy Dore had a tweet, and you kind of said, no, that's not great. what are you doing there, Jimmy? Bad take. And I was like, whoa. I think that's a great take. In fact, I think that the position that a lot of the MAGA people take, or the populist right take on China, is just way off. I got your clip too as well, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of things that you say that I'm like, man, I agree with you, Wayne. Yeah, Wayne, go get him. Absolutely. But when it comes to China, I'm sorry, Wayne. I think that we are way off base, and I personally am concerned more than anything. And you had made a comment about this about 3 months ago on a different tweet. I am concerned with a war against China, and you had put out, hey, nobody wants a war with China. However, we have to identify who China is and what China is. I'm going to play this quick clip that Carl Saw posted, that Jimmy Dore shared, and we kind of got into it. And then we'll go from there, and you'll give us your take on what you think the China presents as a danger or as a need for concern. Okay, check it out, guys. You know what to do. I believe we're on Wayne's his platforms too as well. You know, we got a Rockfin, we got a Rumble, we got a YouTube, we got everything. Do us a favor, share it on out. It is a Manic Monday. Let's wake everybody on up. Here we are. This is Carl Zah's tweet the other day. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. We do appreciate it.
I'm been very concerned lately about China. They're in Africa. They're lending money to countries to build ports and different infrastructure.
To build what?
Port.
And what's wrong with that?
And well, because
countries that need ports get ports.
But they're making people dependent on. I mean, I know it's the same thing that we've done, which is
no, it's not
around the world.
They are far more humanistic than the United States ever was.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. So
let me give you an example. Of course, they are peddling for influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they are non-interventionist. Absolutely non-interventionist in a way that Europeans, the West, has never managed to fathom. The Chinese never asked Apple to go to Shenzhen and produce all the iPhones. It was Steve Jobs that decided that. Yeah? Mm-hmm. It was not China that went to Washington, D.C. and demanded that they buy a third of your national debt. If they hadn't bought it, you would be in serious trouble. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the influence of China outside its borders, it's quite remarkable that they don't seem to have any military ambitions. Instead of going into Africa with troops, colonially, destroying the country, killing people like the West has done for the last 100 years, what they did was they went to Addis Ababa and they said to the government, we can see you have problems with your infrastructure. We would like to build some new airports, upgrade your railway system, create a telephone system, and rebuild your roads. And we'll do this all for free. No strings attached. We don't want anything from you. And they did. Why did they do it? Because this is soft power. They are immensely self-serving, as they would. But at the same time, they have a quality that we need in Southern Europe. Actually, I think everybody needs to have foreign direct investment by patient investors. They're patient investors. They don't come in to grab an asset for speculative purposes. They come in order to create a base on which to build and build and build, and their horizon is 20, 30-year horizon. What Europe has not done with Greece is to do what the Chinese were prepared to do, to come there with their workers, with their engineers, and actually do some serious work.
Yanis Varoufakis, I hope I said his name right, Greek, he's a Greek, I believe, he was the finance minister for Greece, does a lot of talking, goes around. What did he say there that wasn't true? I have your video up, your response to it when we got into it. We'll go into that. But before we get into that, what did Yanis say that wasn't true? The fact is that China has 3 military bases outside of its own territory, one of them being in Djibouti, which is their biggest one, compared to the United States, which has at least 750 to 800 regular bases. That's not even counting the black sites. They probably have close to 1,000 because they have all these facilities. The United States goes in with their missiles, their guns, their tanks, and forces people to do business with them. They're in a military conflict every single week, as opposed to China. The last military conflict they had, I think, was when I was born, almost 50 years ago, a little bit tussle with Vietnam, and it was just a little quick 1, 2, 3. So please, Wayne, tell me what is not true about that statement as far as the way China does business on a foreign policy global scale compared to the United States.
Yeah, a lot of it's true. But here's where the fundamental breakdown comes is when we talk about imperialism. Imperialism doesn't have to happen with military. Imperialism is just basically the way that one country influences another. And you don't need to do that with the military. America's version of imperialism is brute, it's ugly, it's unsophisticated. China's way better at it, but it is imperialism. China is trying to influence the world. They are trying to be the world dominant country, but they are trying to do it without weapons. There's a book out there, very famous, The Art of War. And a part of the art of war is to know when to fight, when not to. And actually, the goal is to never have to, just figuratively speaking, like if you're out in the street, to never have to put hands on someone. Because when you do that, there's a risk. If you can influence somebody with philosophy, almost like a Jedi in Star Wars with Jedi mind tricks, wouldn't you rather do that than have to take out your lightsaber? So let me know. Let's start there. Do you agree that China's imperialist?
No, I do not. They are not an imperialist country. They are a superpower, but imperialism implies conquering another country. Doing business with another country can make you a superpower because you have the means, the necessary, the engineering, the workforce, and whatnot. But to call them an imperialist, that's just plain wrong. They are a superpower. And also, too, I just want to point out that your statement of that, as far as them wanting to take over the world, that's conjecture. That's not true. That's just an opinion. We have no proof of that whatsoever. Why wouldn't a country want to engage globally, economically, with other countries with free trade and bringing their engineering and their workforce in, rather than do what the United States does, which is true imperialism, which is a means of conquering? They're not conquering. They're cooperating. So I don't agree that they are an imperialist, and I don't agree with the statement that they want to go around and be the number one world power. They just have the ways, the means, and the necessities to do so. And they found this way through hard work, through central planning, which I know a lot of people don't like. I mean, I've always called for a mixed economy. And I think when it comes to our economics, that's what China is. They're this form of market socialism. I like it. So I don't agree with you on both counts that they are an imperialist, and I don't agree that the fact that they want to take over the world. I believe they want a more peaceful world, and they've shown that by their actions.
Yeah, I'll put it another way. I think it's a semantics argument in a way, because I think what you're talking about is military imperialism. They don't want to do that. They have a very strong military. They've been building up their navy. They will do these right now. Recently they've been doing it in the Taiwan Strait. This show of force that's really like a peacock, just fluffing their feathers. So I agree. They don't want to use military. That's unsophisticated. They're better than that. They're smarter than that. They're more strategic. When you talk, so maybe it's semantics, because I think diplomatic imperialism is still imperialism. And what's happening is we've got Eastern philosophy versus Western philosophy. And yes, it is conjecture, and this isn't about the Chinese people so much because they are under the boot of the CCP. We saw that with the way they handled the pandemic. They will literally lock you up in your room and say, don't go anywhere. So the CCP, they think Eastern philosophy is better than Western culture. The typical American, I'm a gun-toting American and 2A, and, I got my flag and all that. They're like that. They don't like that part of it. So they say we can infect the world with Eastern philosophy. We don't have to take over the world. We just have the world believe in collectivism. That's what we want the world to believe in, not in individualism.
Oh, I have to still further disagree. I think that's more manufacturing consent for the excuses and the behavior of the United States foreign policy when we say, oh, no, it's just a different form of imperialism. You know what I'm saying? It's just semantics. No, it's not. Cooperation is different than conquering. It's different than coming in there with your weapons. And, why wouldn't the world, it's not about spreading Eastern philosophy. The world is ready for peace. The world understands that the United States has been a brutalizing, and along with the West and their partners, has been a brutalizing, awful imperialistic force. So when you're extending the olive branch and saying, let me come in and build a bridge instead of putting my Air Force base there or my military base, that isn't semantics. That's a totally different way. And the whole spreading of Eastern philosophy. And here's another thing too, as well. They have over 1 billion people. So this is another thing. This is another kind of, I don't want to say the word trope, but this is another kind of like false mentality or ideology. The fact is that the CCP has their boot on the neck of their people. Well, first of all, that's not for us to decide. That's for the Chinese people to decide what they want to do with their own government. And I've seen more examples. Number one, the way they handled COVID might have been a little bit over the top, but they eventually listened to their people when they were pushing back, especially in the last situation in Shanghai. And secondly, the way they treated people with their COVID situation. They didn't mandate their vaccine, and they were actually treating people with proper techniques. They were giving them chloroquine, vitamin C drips, vitamin D. So they were actually curing people a lot quicker than the United States, which were telling you just go home until your lips turn blue and then come back. We'll put you on a ventilator. So, these are a lot of things that we don't have a right to decide. They have 1 billion people plus. So I think that this whole kind of, misleading people, oh, it's not the people, it's the CCP, that manufactures consent for us to go after that peacock, which that peacock is puffing its chest, but it's puffing its chest in its own territory. We're puffing our chest in their territory. And that's something that's why it just drives me crazy when people go, well, look at the way they're acting in the South China Sea. I said, where? In the South China Sea. Say it one more time. In the South China Sea.
China.
It's also their territory. And we're over there where we shouldn't be. So I have to disagree on all fronts there, my friend.
Yeah, well, I agree with you when we talk about we shouldn't be over there. My position has evolved on this. I know we have interest in Taiwan. Taiwan is different than the sunflower country over there having their other
What
issues.
interest do we have, though?
Well, it's the it's the chips.
Superconductor. Right?
Yeah, the superconductor chips. Now, I'm with you, though. I have converted into a more, here's the thing that I had to look at. Am I about peace or am I not? I lean libertarian and MAGA. So we have no business over there. We have had plenty of opportunity to build that manufacturing here. That's MAGA, by the way. But Joe Biden actually did a CHIPS Act on that. But I agree. We have no business over there. But to me, we look at like the Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Road Initiative. To me, I look at it as, hey, Pasta, instead of me trying to set my mobsters over, that's what the U.S. does. They sent the mob to shakedown with the military tanks, weapons, all that, bombs. Instead of doing that, China says, hey, Pasta, wouldn't you like to upgrade your phone? Wouldn't you like to upgrade your infrastructure? How about you borrow a smooth billion from me at this interest rate? I know you can't pay it back. So years later, I build up your infrastructure. They do it in Jamaica. They do it all over the world. And then they say, oh, you can't pay it back? Okay, well, then there might be other ways you can pay us off by, political influence and stuff like that. Do you think that happens or not with the Silk Road, Belt and Road Initiative?
That might happen, but we don't know. We did witness is we just witnessed Vladimir Putin going into Africa and forgiving them for their debt. There's other ways they can make that money up. That's, the life of an economic hitman that a lot of people are referring to, trying to kind of make that parallel that's what China's doing. They're going there and they're buying influence financially with their infrastructure and engineering. But when the time comes to pay up and people can't pay up, they're going to say, we got you now. And, a lot of people are saying that China hasn't had the need to go in for, military wise into a country. But wait. But see, once again, that's still conjecture. We're still waiting. It's still a theory and ideology. And if, in fact, they bring their infrastructure in and they help these countries develop, there's other ways the Chinese business will make money. And let me tell you something. Chinese business is different than Chinese government. And that's the thing that drives me crazy, too, as well. And we'll get into it a little bit more when a lot of these situations where people are like, oh, the Chinese CCP paid off Joe Biden. No, it wasn't. It was an energy company through a Chinese bank, and the Chinese banking system is way bigger than our banking system. You know what I'm saying? And they have more small businesses in China per capita per people. They have more home ownership per capita per people than America does. There's a saying that my friend Carl Zaz said on my show last week. The American dream is alive and well, but yeah, it's alive and well in China. So, you know what I'm saying? Let's play your video really quickly, and we'll kind of dive a little bit more into that. I'm enjoying the conversation. guys, is China our enemy, or does the U.S. need to change and accept their new role in the world? That's what I think they need to do. And I think we need to force their hands. I think we've been kind of putting China off as the enemy a little bit more, because instead of going in, I made this tweet last week, and I'd love to hear your opinion when we come back from your video really quick, Wayne, is I said, if we want to beat China economically, then let's beat them. Let's go back to the old-fashioned USA. Let's reverse NAFTA. Let's bring some manufacturing home, which Donald Trump did try. Let's be honest. He did give a shot at it. When he but put tariffs on certain things in China, he was trying to bring back a manufacturing base to the United States, but he was unable to do that because the United States is not going to change. There's no way the warehouse owners were going to go, no, we're not going to pay these freaking ridiculous salaries here in America. But that's a quagmire right now that we need to figure out. And that happened way before Donald Trump. And it did happen from the Republican Party too, as well. Ronald Reagan was the setup for Bill Clinton to go ahead and sign NAFTA. So, I mean, it was like he deregulated a lot of things. The regulations could be over the top. Let's take a look at your video. So much to be said, guys. Do us a favor, share, like, do all the things that make the show go.
For some reason, you think China is so loving and they aren't really aggressive. What about Xi Jinping? Is this savage enough for you?
中国人民
At the same time, the Chinese people will never allow any foreign forces to bully, oppress, or enslave us. Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloody against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
China could not get troops in our country to forcibly take down a statue of Thomas Jefferson from New York City Hall. They couldn't do it if they wanted to with force of military weapons and guns. They use philosophy. This Maoism that we are falling victim to, this neo-Marxism, it's originated from China. They fund our institutions, whether it's the universities that teach the teachers and set all the platforms for the country, and was where all the people you would pick to run for politicians, they get taught in this ideology. Entertainment, we just talked about Star Wars. We can't even enjoy a damn Star Wars TV series without critical theory. It's not even Star Wars anymore. Just like a creative way for Ibram X. Kendi to get his thoughts out there. That's China destroying us. You can't, they're so good at it. They got Caitlin Johnstone supporting it, saying that they're benevolent leaders.
Will have their heads bashed bloody against the Great Wall of Steel.
Are you blushing now? That's your take? Yeah, the populist right understands that. It's okay to agree with them. It's made in China, comes over in various ways. We leave our borders open. They don't leave their borders open. They buy farmland here. We can't buy farmland there. They sleep with sitting members of Congress who want to get their bang on, and they are still on the Intelligence Committee in the House. We can't do that there. That's warfare.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
You're out of school on this topic. Drop it. Be humble and learn.
Oh, shit. It's funny because I'm about to school you on this topic over here, my man. But I'm gonna give you the first stab at it because I don't know where you want to go with that video, guys. Wayne McEachron's joining the show from Middle MAGA. He's got a YouTube show, but go over to him on his Stuck in the Middle on his Twitter. Osiris, as he's known about. We're talking about China over here, my man. I want to dig into that video really hard because I think you were wrong on all ends over there. But go ahead and reinforce what you said and tell us why you think China is still a threat. I mean, if you want to start off with him saying, "Well, bashing it, but he's heading," I'm defending your own people, your own sovereignty, your own territory, especially when a country like America did what they did in Indochina over there in Vietnam, Laos. Right on their doorstep. Go right ahead, Wayne. Give us a little insight.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's even a libertarian approach. Libertarian is peace. If I break that down to peace, prosperity, and decentralization. But the peace part, I would agree with that. They want to be peaceful, but they want to have defenses to go against people if they, cross the line. But the reason I brought that up is to say, This is not some country that's like a little teddy bear off in the corner. They are a raging lion. They just don't roar until needed. And does that sound like that message right there was clearly for the United States? And here's what I think the populist left take is. The populist left take is the United States is to blame for the CCP hating America. I agree with that. But that still means they're a threat, though. Is that the right take? Is it right to position it that way?
When you refer to the populist left, I don't know if there is a populist left. If you're referring to me and like the Gray Zone and Jimmy Dore and all those guys, I would say the anti-imperialist left is what we're known for, because we lead with our foreign policy and we're all about, old school liberalism, that you have a right to do whatever you want or identify as whatever you want. You just don't push that on other people. That's where the American left now, I think, is the establishment left, is very different. But I believe that, yes, we do feel that way. And, whether we feel they're a mouse, whether we feel they're a lion and they have the capabilities to do what they want to do, it's not like they're sailing warships between Cuba and Florida like what we're doing. We're instigating. Other than the semiconductor situation in Taiwan, most of it is about being a proxy against Beijing. We're the ones that are in the South China Sea. So, yes, I would say that we definitely feel that way, that this is more about American imperialism and America puffing up their chest and doing what they want to do. The hegemon still leading. But for a country to say, hey, man, we're not going to be your little bitches anymore, I have no problem with that whatsoever. So the recognition of China being a superpower and being able to defend themselves military-wise, I don't see the problem with that. So, I mean,
yeah. And I agree with you. And just to be clear, I'm a big Jimmy Dore fan. I'm on my top 10 list for president. I wouldn't want to wish running to president on anyone, but Jimmy Dore is number 4 on my list. So I'm a very high respect for him. So we see it. I agree. America is to blame for the anger that the CCP has for the U.S., but that doesn't change. They're still an adversary. You could call them a frenemy. We still have to trade with them. We got to do business with them. And I agree. The approach that America has is awful. Military bases all over the place, wasting money. It's inefficient. It's barbaric. It's immoral. I agree completely. The CCP has a much better approach. I wish that we had that same approach. And what they've done, though, is they said, okay, we've got a Western culture problem. What that really means is we have a constitution problem. The way that they view the world in China is different than ours, fundamentally. You could not take the concept of the Bill of Rights from America and put it into the CCP. That wouldn't happen. They are centralized control. It was probably fair to call them totalitarian. I don't even know what they are. A totalitarian capitalist state. I don't even know. Are they really communist?
No, they're market socialists. They have a free market there. They opened it up to a lot of companies where companies came in. Like I said, small business ownership is more fruitful in China. Home ownership is more fruitful in China. Now, I mean, everything, once again, we're talking about when it comes to their control as far as their culture, it's all conjecture. It's all, I mean, in that video, I felt you got a little Bannon-ish, you know what I'm saying? Like, and a little Pasovic there. I was a little bit like, whoa, come on, Wayne, where's this coming from? But it's all conjecture. And I've talked to a lot more people who understand. See, that's the problem, is people don't understand China. The American public doesn't understand China. And when you have war hawks like Steve Bannon, who are getting funded by Miles Guo and a Chinese descendant, a guy who was thrown, who's wanted as a criminal in China, and you got him funding Bannon, you got this whole spear of people, who, and this is the crazy part, because the conservative movement was all about what? Individual responsibility. The conservative party, the populist right, is all about individual responsibility, but they want none of it when it comes to foreign policy, none of it whatsoever. And the way we talk about this jumping off point with forgetting our history, the United States of amnesia, is just mind-boggling to me. We have been the aggressors for quite some time. We're the ones doing all the death and destruction everywhere with our military bases. And I always sense the populist right wanting to get done with it, but this kind of mental pivot to China being our enemy, like China's pulling the strings behind the scenes, which is the next part I disagree with you, which is the cultural Marxism. where does cultural Marxism come from? Well, guess what? It doesn't come from Maoism. They don't have any of that cultural bullshit over there. They're more about the economic socialism, where the proletariat and the people out there want to control their economics, and they don't want corporations coming in and raping their lambs. Cultural Marxism doesn't even come from Marx. We call it campus Marxism because it was a CIA weapon. What's the best way to split people, Wayne? To culturally divide them, to put all these cultural war issues in there. I've been to Latin America. I've been to 6 countries right now. They don't have this cultural Marxism bullshit. It's all economic Marxism. And that's where this comes into play. You know, the one area which you have a little bit of wiggle room in my mind is China's money and influence they have sometimes in academia. But, you know what I'm saying? Once again, what do you want to do? You want to abolish the capitalist system? In the capitalist system, it's supposed to be the market determines where shit goes, not the state. So you have a problem when you've already done business with China for years and they want to spend their American dollars. What are you going to do? But I'm not so sure at all what role they play as far as setting the agenda, you know, and this, once again, this seems to me like a little Bannon Pasovic kind of story where they're trying to set this boogeyman that China's pulling the strings and they're the ones responsible for the cultural divide. No, that's our own oligarchs. That's our own Western freaking crazy people. The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. That's where this shit comes from, not from China. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, China spent a lot of money in our universities. A lot of these philosophies are coming through there. And no, they don't have that in the CCP, to my knowledge, right now. They don't have this cultural Marxism, but they know about it. Obviously, they know about Mao, highly respected. They know about Maoism, and they know the power of these philosophies. So basically, you take, at its core, like classic Marxism, all it is, you can get very complicated into the economics and all that, but all it is to divide a society into 2 different halves. There is no middle ground in Marxism. Either you want to overthrow the bourgeois or you don't. It ain't no.
Well, who is the bourgeois? It was the argument. Like right now, the owner class is what I call them. When the people who have small businesses, that was once a problem. When cultural Marxism came into place, they pushed those people into that class category. But when you talk about the class divide, you're talking about the ruling class. You're talking about the elites, the predator class. That's who's separated from. That's who the eye is on when it comes to the economics. Don't let these oligarchs and these corporations rape us. But that's the problem. They've conflated with like business owners being part of that class. That's just simply not the case. But go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No. Oh, no. It's right on point. But here's so they took that philosophy. That's where it should be. But they took that philosophy, and I make it akin to China being just a stranger outside of a. So we are in a marriage in the United States, and China is on the outside. They don't like us. They might be justified in not liking us, but they don't like us, period.
When you say they don't like us, who are you talking about? They don't like our government?
Well, let me make it simple. They don't like the Constitution. They don't like Western ideals. Western ideals are individualism. So the perfect example is the pandemic. Pandemic happens. I get to choose if I get a jab in my shoulder or not. In a collective group, a collective philosophy says you don't get to choose. You put a jab in your shoulder because that's the benefit of society.
Wait, so why did we mandate the vaccine and China did not?
Well, that's the problem. Because they are influencing us to become collective. That ain't an American philosophy. That's anti-constitutional. That is not.
How are they influencing us, though? I mean, come on. I mean, are you talking about this leak through the schools again? And but it's a lot of people who don't go through schools, and most of the people who are right now who are anti-China are people who didn't go through this type of schooling.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, the schooling is just one aspect. I don't know if there's any aspect of our country that isn't corrupted via money. Entertainment, movies, they got to think about, what can we put in this movie or not? Because we need to get the China dollars. And you can look at TikTok. It's high, big in the news right now. I upload shorts to TikTok. You know how weird it is for a company to be owned by China. Basically,
they're not owned by China.
Well, here's the thing, though.
They're not. They're owned by the CEOs from Singapore. And in the bill here, and once again, the China didn't draft this bill. All this bill was drafted by anti-China legislators. They drafted more taking away of our civil liberties. It's the enemy is inside the house. It's not China. That's how they're duping us. Josh Hawley went and drafted this bill with all these other crazy people. It doesn't mention TikTok once in it, and doesn't mention was it ByteDance one in it, the parent company. It doesn't mention it once. So I mean,
I
how
agree.
is China having an influence then?
Well, so there's a lot going on. That is the American, it's just like the Patriot Act is taking advantage of this time. But let's forget about the Restrict Act because that's a garbage piece of legislation. But here's what really is happening, though. ByteDance owns TikTok. There is no company, no major corporation in China that doesn't have a member of the CCP on it. They don't operate like the U.S. Well, the U.S. is trying to get to that same. The DEI initiative in the U.S. is the same as the CCP having a member on the board or whatever of every company in China. So ByteDance has direct control. They're controlled directly by the CCP. They own TikTok. They have TikTok on the. What you don't think it's owned?
That's not true. They've already discussed this before. Whatnot, and the Singaporean CEO said the data is stored over here. Nobody from China has requested anything, and that doesn't mean they can get everything. The data's over here. They have all the. I mean, once again, this is kind of like this is conjecture again, trying to say, oh, China's controlling this shit and whatnot. That's not true. We don't know that. We don't know what they know. And by the way, I'm not worried about Xi Jinping showing up on my door from looking at my data, as compared to what Edward Snowden told us for years, that our own country has been collecting data on us 10,000 times more than they were looking at the Russians and the Chinese. We know this, but yet we forget that. And then all of a sudden our attention's on China collecting our data. So they're going to get a recipe from me about how to cook a pomodoro or something. I mean, it's just, it makes no sense. Meanwhile, you have our own country, our own government that's been working hand in hand. Once again, if the screenshots from Twitter files didn't show you, they're working hand in hand with big tech to get all our information. They're collecting so much information on us, our own government and our own big tech companies, that they have to outsource the storing of the data. But yet we're going to go China. It makes
I agree.
No sense to me. Ow, sorry.
Well, no, I agree with you. We got to focus on what's happening here first. We can't control China. And you know who else said that? Grandpappy Don. I call him Grandpappy Don. Donald Trump said that too recently. But I got to get that recipe from you for real after we're done. I'm sure you got to. I'll try to get my cooking game right. But no, seriously though. Yeah, but seriously. So, we might disagree on this one, but ByteDance is a Chinese company. I upload video shorts to TikTok and YouTube and all over. I have a problem with all the social media companies. But I just find it weird for TikTok to be owned by a Chinese company and to be able to censor my thoughts on American politics. Why can't we do that to them? Why can't we own a social media company in China and then we can edit? I mean, when I say we, this is going to be the CIA basically, but why doesn't that happen the other way?
Well, I would still argue that they don't own it, that the parent company does own it, and we're not going after that parent company. You know what I'm saying? The data is stored over here, and the algorithm that takes place is not that China's sitting there and moving an algorithm behind. Once again, we want to blame Chinese for our cultural fucking norms over here in the United States. It's not China doing this to us. It's us doing this to ourselves. We've been, and you got to agree on this one, right?
Oh yeah,
we've been influenced. Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood has been influeing the public before China was even a country.
Yeah, but
the way they were before their revolution and everything. This is the reason why that algorithm hits for people dancing is because Americans have sexualized every single aspect of society, and we like stupid shit. They've embraced their form of collectivism, which is coming together as people and highlighting engineers and mathematicians and whatnot. It's their culture versus our culture, and it's not China's fault for our culture issues. It's our fault. I would like to take some accountability for our actions, and that's the crazy thing that's going on about this whole conversation with the populace, right? It's like, you don't want to take any accountability for our actions. You want to blame China? Hey, we need not worry about China if we want to deal with China. We just have to outwork them. We have to be what we were always told we're being, the greatest nation in the United States. Well, let's get back to that. Let's get a manufacturing base back. Let's get good jobs over here. Let's get our schools back. You know what I'm saying? Let's do that. We can do that over here. It's got nothing to do with China. It's got everything to do with ourselves. Go ahead, buddy.
That was a great little. I want to clip that and make that like a MAGA ad. No, seriously, because
go ahead, buddy.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I had Gavin Mario Wax on my show. Gavin Wax, you might know him, the young Republican and whatnot. He's awesome. He's been going on a lot of shows. When we talked about this, we had the same thing. This is our decisions, our moves. I call myself a base leftist or an anti-imperialist leftist because the first thing I would do right away is close half these bases down, right? Not that they're just inhumane and bad. How much money do we waste on these things, Wayne? It's just bleeding our pocket. And rather than spending that money at home, we're spending it abroad, fucking around with these other countries so these corporations can make money. The same people who are screwing us at home are screwing us in the global south. They're screwing us overseas. We need to take care of that.
Yeah. So let's pretend. Let me use a marriage analogy again, because I think this is why it's great to have discussion. So I'm understanding the take from the base left better here. So pretend you and I are in a marriage, Pasta. Believe it or not, no homo. Pretend we're in a marriage.
I'll cook. I'll clean. You make the money. I'll be there waiting.
I'll do whatever we need to do to make it work. But
Gotcha.
what in order for us to communicate, then I think what we could do is, because when you say China's not an enemy, the populist, for lack of a better term, the populist right, the people who are kind of more on my side, they're kind of going to be cringing a little bit. So if you just say, hey, forget about China, focus on us first, if that's Jimmy Dore's message, perfectly agree. When you start saying China isn't an enemy, China is not imperialist, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that, and then it kind of clouds the message. And there's same things with what the right can do when communicating with the left. Just don't phrase certain things like, oh, China this, China that. Why don't we focus on us first? 100%. Agree 100% with that.
Well, I got to say that I'm kind of on the fence for that because and what I'm really happy about is that nobody's no longer acquiescing to the left anymore and their bullshit and their woke crapness. Like, you have to put up these disclaimers when you say stuff, and that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not for Donald Trump, but the populist right has some points about them. Like, no, that's acquiescing to the left. And you know what? I'm not going to acquiesce to the right before. I'm sorry. The populist right is still part of the Republican Party. You already had your fuck up in Iraq, where every single Republican at the dinner table on Thanksgiving said, no, we got to remove Saddam Hussein. No, there's weapons of mass destruction. You already had your blunder. We're not going to acquiesce when it comes to our foreign policy anymore. And I'm sorry, the populist right's ideology when it comes to China is way off. Let's talk about this last subject because I do have to get out of here in 12 minutes. I got to go on Garland Nixon's show and Dr. Wilmer show. This whole blaming of China for the fentanyl crisis. Yeah. I'm going to give you the first stab at it, and then I'm going to jump in after, because this also, once again, this is the populist right not taking any accountability for themselves when they're supposed to be the party of individual responsibility. And the two things I will ask you, number one, when it comes to this, number one, who runs the cartels? And number two, who's to blame in the first place for turning our citizens into addicts? Go ahead. I
see how you pin me in the corner there. You try to get me to, you wanted me to admit the CIA runs the cartels or what?
Damn straight. We got Iran-Contra. I got all the information. We got the heroin things through the pizzerias and the mob. We already have this information that we know the cartels. New Jack City, baby, right? Freeway Rick Ross. Let's get into this. We know the cartels have been running have been run by the CIA. The CIA has been their capos for quite some time. So if we really want to address the cartels, we don't go look down at AMLO in Mexico. We look at Langley. But go ahead.
No, that was a good one. Knight to E4. You got to check. Yes, I agree. I think it's clear the CIA is running the cartels, and you can't blame China 100% for this. But my understanding is that China does play a role from where this is originating. You've got, I'm not an expert in how this whole thing is made, but you've got some of the ingredients sourced out of China, sent over to Mexico, because our borders are open. Their borders are not open. You can't do this the other way around, at least not as prevalent. And if I'm right, and China does hate America, and they want to end the Constitution, they want to destroy America, they would fund somehow indirectly politicians who want open borders. Populists should not believe in open borders. That destroys American workers. But for some reason, you've got Bernie Sanders and others supporting open borders. And another part of it is you can get drugs in. The number one cause of death, ages 18 to 45 in the United States, is, I believe it's specifically fentanyl. And am I wrong there that the ingredients are sourced in China, sent over to the cartels, and then flooded through our
Well,
borders?
the ingredients can be sourced in China, and sometimes they were sourced in China, but they can be sourced in the United States. That's the whole thing. Eventually, fentanyl can be distributed in the United States, can be made in the United States. It's easier to make fentanyl than it is to make meth. And I just think this fits into the whole Walter White story. It's an easy way to sell it to the public when you could say, oh my God, it's, because of the opium wars, China's getting us back. You have these politicians like Cruz saying it's 1,000-year war. Like, well, America's only been a country for what, like 400 years now or something, like less than 4. So how could it be 1,000-year wars? I think it was the governor of Montana, same thing, a 2,000-year war. But you can see right here, I posted the other day, we're now entering the Salamanca cousins. I don't know if you remember that show, the Breaking Bad. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Right, the Salamanca cousins, right? There they are, right? They're smuggling the fentanyl into America while Walter White is playing the parallel to the CIA and Big Pharma, and he goes undetected by the authorities while the press peddles their propaganda. No, this is not a TV series. This is real. And look at this here. This was in the New York Times over the weekend. I'm a newspaper guy, Wayne. I like to get the newspaper when I'm out on the road, especially when I'm in different airports. I was in Denver. I grabbed the New York Times. Look at this here. This is how ridiculous I think this is. 4 sons of the notorious Mexican drug lord El Chapo face fentanyl indictments. This is how they're selling this shit like it's a TV series over here. El Chapo's sons, the Salamanca cousins. They're getting the drugs. They're getting the ingredients outsourced from China, give it to the cartels, smuggled into the United States. So now we can have a bill drafted up in our Congress, so we can go to Mexico anytime we want without the permission of their government. We can go and invade anytime we want, and that's why we're doing. And once again, no accountability. The CIA has been running shit for how long? We know this for quite some time. You know this, Wayne. Iran-Contra. You can't ignore this shit. They've been doing it for quite some time. And then also, you didn't mention it. The big pharma buddies, the Sackler family, had to pay all this money for getting our citizens addicted to opioids in the first place. Even like what Viv said, Vivek
Ramaswamy.
Rama Ding Dong. Yeah, that's what I like to call this guy, this other China hawk who wants to arm the fucking borders. And I've been saying this for quite some times. If you want to fix the migration problem, we have 82 of those bases that we talked about at 1,000. They're down in Latin America. They're there to make sure they secure the resources for the corporations, taking away that country's national sovereignty, their resource sovereignty, causing them to come here in the first place, because we always fund the craziest of craziest that will do whatever for us, just like we're doing in the Ukraine, just like we did with the Mujahideen. We did the same thing with the Contras and everybody down there and the Batista regimes. This is what we always do, because they'll give us our goodies. So we're not taking accountability for, number one, for our corporations causing the migration problem. We're not taking any accountability for the doctors who have addicted our citizens to these drugs and the opioids. We're not taking any accountability for the CIA, who's still running things. And anybody who tried to take on the CIA was killed. So once again, it's all again with this whole, it's China, it's cartels. It's a lack of individual responsibility coming from the populist right. Go ahead, buddy.
There's nothing that you just said that I would disagree with. And that's my biggest takeaway from this discussion right now is I will agree. And you might hear me or see me making that point from this, based on this discussion, that I still think China is an enemy. I don't have proof. I have a lot of evidence though, but I would say we got to focus on us. And you're right. I think the populist right, you're right. Bannon is a little bit more hawkish. Bannon doesn't want to close any bases, but many people on the populist right would agree with, okay, let's close up these bases. And maybe not in Taiwan because it's very sensitive with those chips. But I agree with you. We close up those bases, use that money elsewhere, it sounds silly to say, but if I'm going to talk about the CCP, why can't I talk about holding the CIA accountable for what they're doing? But then let me challenge you. Would you agree that we need to not close the borders like solidly, but, live up to the laws we have on the books and stop this mass crossing the border? It hurts workers. It's whoever's doing the drugs. It's hurting us with bringing it over. We have to take responsibility for using it. We don't need to be using it. But what do you think on the borders?
I'll tell you this, the same thing I told a lot of my populist right friends. I'll give you whatever you want for the border. You want a wall, you want laser beams, whatever you want, anything you want at the border. Just close the bases down in Latin America. If you close the
Fair.
bases down in Latin America, they'll have no need to come here. You know, when I was in Honduras, right, I was asking the campaign coming in from Xiomara Castro, hey, man, what are you going to nationalize when, you guys take over? They're like, we're not going to nationalize anything. We're going to just open up to different markets and different countries and stuff like that. They understand that they can only do so much. In Honduras, there are 3 United States military bases, one of them the biggest ones on that hemisphere, right? And we've always supported the craziest people. Juan Orlando Hernandez, who now is in the United States, who's been trafficked and stuff like that. But when I was in that country, they just wanted to get rid of the chaos. They wanted to get rid of these people that are there. We always do these things. So I will do anything you want at the border if you give me, let's close those bases. We give these people back their national sovereignty. We give them back their resource sovereignty. Wayne, they ain't going to have to come here, baby. They're going to stay in their own country. And I believe that. I firmly believe that from traveling down there. It was something I believed for beforehand. But when I went down there, it just reinforced it. I will do whatever you want at the border. Populist right, Donald Trump, build your wall. Do whatever you want. Close your bases down and let these people have their own rights to their own government. Let's crush and burn the Monroe Doctrine for once and for all. We don't need it. And we can do our own thing back home. We can do our own thing over here. We can grow our own food. We can grow our own resources. That's what I would like to do. Come here. Let's do America first for real.
That's a fair trade. And that's why I roll with you guys at Convo Couch, you and Fiorella. That's based. Y'all are well-traveled. I've learned so much about countries like Brazil recently. You guys had the best take on Brazil. Tucker's great. Tucker Carlson's great. He was bad on Brazil. Bannon is great. He was bad on Brazil. You guys, so I wish Tucker would interview you, and I agree completely. What a fair trade. We do whatever we need to do on the border as long as you close the bases. I think if you got
fair trade,
no arguments, let's do it.
You can shut that mother effort down. You can beef up the Coast Guard and on all ends and stop migration coming in. As long as you close those bases over there, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm down. As long as we're not causing the problem, I'm cool with you protecting the borders and who comes in here. I have no problem with that whatsoever, because I honestly believe it would be a lot less if we gave back these countries their national sovereignty. But that's going to take a change all in all. And you're right. Bannon is great. He was great when it came to the COVID stuff. But that's how they get you. They get you a little trust over here to get you over there. And none of those people wanted to have me on any of their shows for the Brazil election. Everybody was cool exploiting an ex-Democrat that thinks the 2020 election wasn't fair. Oh, let's get him on there. But as soon as it came to Brazil, they weren't picking up the phones. And who were they taking all their information from? All Bannon, InfoWars, Tucker. They took all their information when it came to Brazil from Matthew Turman, who wasn't even there for the Brazilian elections. And what did Matthew Turman turn out to be? He turned out to be the guy who crushed Project Veritas and got rid of James O'Keefe. So you reap what you sow.
Called it. And he was friend of Steve Bannon, friend of show of the War Room. And you guys were on the streets there. Not many people were like on the streets knowing what's going on. So I really appreciate that, the work that you've done there. Fair trade and Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whoever, Laura Loomer, whoever, Ron DeSantis, Vivek, tell me where it's wrong. Close the bases in the Latin countries and we close the border. What's wrong with that trade?
You'll get a deal. I love you. I got to get out of here. I got another show, but tell everybody where they can find you, my man. And let's do this again. I'd love to come on your show. I love seeing you on Tim Pool. It was pretty awesome. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on here. A lot of people haven't been answering the calls, but I've liked your work for quite some time, Wayne, and I'm glad that you did come on today. We should have done this before in the past. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. You don't know how much that means to me, the respect I have for you guys. But just Middle MAGA, Twitter, YouTube. I have a website called middlemaga.com. Don't get it twisted. I love my friends on the base left, the anti-imperialist left. So we want to have a conversation so we can bond and get that power, political power going together. Thank you.
All right, guys. That's it for Convo Couch here today with my good friend Middle MAGA. Wayne, we'll see you soon. Do us everything you can do that favors. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you soon.